Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines: Germany, France say US is breaking world order, Pakistan's $1.5 billion deal to supply weapons to Sudan, Somalia ends agreements with UAE, global growth to slow as tariffs and geopolitical tensions rise, Japan deep-sea mining for rare earths, and coffee beats diabetes drug. Starting with politics, Germany, France say US is breaking world order. President Steinmeier said global democracy was being attacked as never before and urged the world not to let the world order disintegrate. French President Macron said the US was breaking free from international rules and turning away from allies. Central African Republic President Touadéra wins contested third term. President Touadéra, a key ally of Russia's, secured a third term with 76% of the vote. But runner-up Dolo rejected the result, alleging the election data had been manipulated. Touadéra in 2023 oversaw the removal of presidential term limits, allowing him to maintain rule over a country that has faced security and economic challenges since an insurgency in 2013. Pakistan nears $1.5 billion deal to supply weapons, jets to Sudan. The deal involves 10 Karakoram-8 light attack aircraft, more than 200 drones and advanced air defense systems, in a potential major boost for Sudan's army against the paramilitary rapid support forces. It also includes Super Mushak training aircraft and potentially JF-17 fighters developed jointly with China and produced in Pakistan. US withdraws from 66 international organizations. The US suspended support for mostly UN-related agencies, commissions, and advisory panels focused on climate, labor, and diversity initiatives. The UN said the US remains obligated under the UN Charter to contribute to the regular UN budget. Myanmar military faces Rohingya genocide case at UN court. The case, filed by the Gambia, centers on military operations in 2016 and 2017 that forced more than 700,000 Rohingya to flee to neighboring Bangladesh. The proceedings are the first genocide case the International Court of Justice, ICJ, has heard at this level in more than a decade. Moving to stories in conflict, death toll rises in Iran protests as authorities cut internet. Iranian demonstrators continued as authorities cut internet access and the death toll from a crackdown rose. The unrest began with the shutdown of the Tehran Bazaar on December 28 after the rial currency fell to record lows. Lebanese army says it has taken over security in Hezbollah-dominated south. Lebanon has been under international pressure to disarm Hezbollah, a powerful militia and political party, since a ceasefire deal in November 2024 ended a year-long war between Israel and Hezbollah. The army had set a year-end deadline to clear the area south of the Litani River, about 30 kilometers from the border with Israel, of non-state weapons in the first phase of a government-backed plan. Last Kurdish fighters leave Syria's Aleppo city. Following a ceasefire deal that allowed evacuations after days of deadly clashes, the departure of the last Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, marks the removal of Kurdish forces from pockets of Aleppo they have held since Syria's war began in 2011, while Kurdish forces continue to run a semi-autonomous zone across large parts of northeastern Syria. Sudan government returns to Khartoum. It comes after nearly 3 years of operating from its wartime capital of Port Sudan after the army-aligned government fled the capital in April 2023, which was then overtaken by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF. The government has pursued a gradual return to Khartoum since the army recaptured the city last March. Somalia ends agreements with UAE. In annulling all agreements, including port deals and defense and security cooperation, it accused the United Arab Emirates of undermining its national sovereignty. Somalia launched an investigation after the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen said the UAE had helped a separatist leader out of Yemen via Somalia. Moving to stories in economics, global growth to slow as tariffs and geopolitical tensions rise. The United Nations forecast global economic growth of 2.7% in 2026. down from last year's estimate, citing higher US tariffs, policy uncertainty, and geopolitical tensions. UN economists see growth rising to 2.9% in 2027, still below the 2010-19 average of 3.2%. Growth is seen at 2.8% in 2025. China's consumer inflation scales three-year high in December. However, the full-year rate fell to the lowest in 16 years, while producer deflation persisted, backing market expectations for more stimulus to shore up soft demand. Imbalances in the $19 trillion economy have worsened over the past year, as the trade war with the US added to persistently soft consumer demand, which has remained a drag on confidence and growth for years amid a prolonged property crisis. India forecasts stronger economic growth than expected. India projected its economy would expand more than previously expected, maintaining its status as the world's fastest-growing major nation. The figures suggest the country is weathering trade tensions with the US, as well as regional security and political issues. Remarkably, the central bank has cut its inflation forecast, pointing to something of a Goldilocks period in which growth is not accompanied by significant price rises. General Motors reports $7 billion earnings loss after pulling back from EVs. The Detroit auto giant's fourth-quarter results will be dented by $6 billion in charges connected to reversals on EV investments. GM's profit warning follows Ford announcing it will write off about 19.5 billion over several years amid the shifting policy outlook. UK construction hit by worst run since global financial crisis. UK construction output shrank for the 12th month in a row in December, the longest unbroken run of declines since the global financial crash of 2007-09, although there were signs of optimism among companies. The Purchasing Managers' Index, PMI, had a headline reading of 40.1 in December, close to its 5.5-year low of 39.4 in November. Any reading below 50 indicates contraction. Now for news in development. Kuwait deports thousands of foreign workers in nationality crackdown. Nearly 40,000 expatriates were deported from Kuwait in 2025. As the government continued to remove foreign workers as well as citizens, it claims gained their nationality illegitimately. The crackdown has accelerated since Kuwait's emir dissolved parliament in May 2024 and began a regulatory overhaul to address consistent deficits for the oil revenue-dependent nation, with 80% of the budget spent on subsidies and salaries. Macron says France will vote against EU-Mercosur deal after farmers' protest. The accord would create one of the world's biggest free trade areas and allow the 27-nation EU to export more vehicles, machinery, wines, and spirits to Latin America. But French farmers fear being undercut by a flow of cheaper goods from agricultural giant Brazil and its neighbours. India plans to scrap curbs on Chinese firms bidding for government contracts. The move comes after 5 years of restrictions imposed, following a deadly 2020 border clash, which required Chinese companies to obtain political and security clearance before participating in tenders. Japan's deep-sea mining for rare earths amid China export ban. A Japanese mining ship began a government-backed test mission that aims to continuously mine rare earths from 6.5 kilometers below sea level, the first of its kind in the world. The goal is to diversify the country's sources of critical minerals and follows China's export ban on materials that could be used by Japan's military, a move linked to rising diplomatic strain over Tokyo's statements on Taiwan and regional security. MetaSigns deals with 3 nuclear companies for 6+ GW of power. Nuclear power has become a favored power source for tech companies as their AI ambitions have grown, providing stable 24/7 electricity. Finally, our social news, OpenAI launches ChatGPT Health to review your medical records. The firm wants people to share their medical records along with data from their apps, which will be analyzed to give personalized advice. In response to privacy concerns, OpenAI said conversations in ChatGPT Health would be stored separately to other chats and would not be used to train its AI tools, as well as clarifying it was not intended to be used for diagnosis or treatment. China's artificial sun breaks fusion limit scientists thought was unbreakable. The fully superconducting East Tokamak became the first reactor to give experimental confirmation of a theoretical, density-free regime where plasma remains stable even when pushed beyond traditional limits. If true, the breakthrough could remove a major obstacle that's held fusion back for decades. Long COVID may be fueled by inflammation and tiny clots. Long COVID affects an estimated 65 million people worldwide and can damage the brain, heart, blood vessels, and immune system long after infection. Researchers now link symptoms to lingering virus, inflammation, microclots, and disrupted energy metabolism. While structured rehab and pacing can improve quality of life, experimental treatments, from antivirals and metformin to microbiome therapies and biologics, shows early promise. Newly discovered coffee compounds beat diabetes drug in lab tests. Researchers found several new coffee compounds that inhibit aglucosidase, a key enzyme linked to type 2 diabetes. Some of these molecules were even more potent than a common anti-diabetic drug. The study also introduced a faster, greener way to uncover health-boosting compounds in complex foods. Common food preservatives linked to cancer and type 2 diabetes. Two large French cohort studies link several widely used food preservatives to higher risks of cancer and type 2 diabetes. Using long-term dietary and health data from the Nutrinet Santé study, researchers found associations between high intake of certain preservatives and increased incidence of breast, prostate, and overall cancers, as well as diabetes. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.